All For One's weakness has been revealed and Endeavor is in trouble. The latest chapter of My Hero Academia opens up with a flashback to Hawks discussing All For One's weakness with Best Jeanist. All For One's mask was already believed to be some form of life support, but with that and them learning that he took from the Tartarus life support machines, it is clear his body cannot survive on its own. Hawks would then go on to state that normally the best course of action would be to overwhelm him with numbers. The issue with that is All For One's quirk stealing ability. With it, their already limited numbers will be put at risk. The idea of targeting this weakness is great in theory, but of course it is easier said than done when your opponent is the Demon Lord himself. The plan would then be to pack the maximum amount of power into the smallest group possible and run All For One into the ground. Endeavor and Hawks would be the unit tasked with taking down this great enemy, and this team is one we should all have respect for when it comes to battle. They did after all take down Hood, another seemingly impossible opponent who, like All For One, did have many quirks. Their great coordination and tactical genius displayed during that fight was to be their greatest weapon now. But before we go any further, this video is sponsored by the official My Hero Academia collectible card game. They were kind enough to let us check out their latest set, Crimson Rampage. And first and foremost, this box art is incredible. Highlighting the events of the anime's second season, I can't lie, these cards have me feeling pretty nostalgic about the series as a whole. Speaking of which, this is such a great way to support the series, and there's just something so satisfying about opening up these packs. And if you want to take things even further once you've got your hands on some cards, the organized play season is currently underway, and by joining the UGN Play app, you can enter tournaments for the chance to win amazing prizes like rare alternate art cards and Nintendo Switch consoles. Then there's a championship event at the end of the year with a prize pool of $250,000. Links will be in the description for you guys to pick up your very own My Hero Academia Crimson Rampage cards and even to help you participate in their tournament events. We'll keep opening up these packs and hopefully we'll be able to find a really rare card. Thanks again to the My Hero Academia collectible card game, but now back to the latest My Hero Academia chapter. The battle for society's future would continue with All For One firing off several air/type attacks in the direction of the charging duo, the likes of which stemming from his middle finger, as you may recall. Hawks would yell out to Endeavor as he slashes closed in, and with a giant fire curtain from hell, the attacks would be neutralized. Quickly then, bullet-like feathers would burst through the curtain at blazing speeds towards All For One. This would fail, however, and Hawks, who snuck behind the masked enemy, would be spotted immediately. And All For One, being the master troll he is, would enjoy this moment right here, going on to taunt Hawks about his lost speed and wings that are no longer what they used to be after the damage he sustained on account of DABI during the previous war. He'd note that not even Recovery Girl could help reverse the damage, and that Hawks could only even reach his current speed of his with the help of prosthetics. This just goes to show the depth of All For One's intelligence network. Despite remaining hidden for oh so very long, this course of action ultimately proved to be advantageous for him, as the remaining heroes had no choice but to expose themselves and their current abilities in an effort to curb the rampant crime in this newfound state of anarchy. And here, All For One was flexing his in-depth knowledge in an effort to trip up his especially methodical adversary. However, Hawks, with his usual humorous personality, would smile and shrug off All For One's comment. When it comes to avoiding the mind games, Hawks is far better than Endeavor, and probably most people who would come face to face with All For One. Anyway, following his failed sneak attack, Hawks would fall back and Endeavor would charge forward like a meteorite, determined to deal some damage to All For One. This next bit of information would make it abundantly clear just how difficult this battle is. We would get a closer look at the plans of Hawks and Endeavor. Well aware of the damage All For One is able to do with his giant shockwave quirk, they aim to fight in a way that would limit the usage of it to protect the people on the ground. The strategy was to deal with him in close combat, but that of course wasn't easy because they would be done for if All For One were to get his hands on them and steal their quirks. Fighting All For One was no simple task, and as we will continue to be shown, even if he can't touch them, simply being within earshot of All For One is a very dangerous predicament to be in. Endeavor and his flames would then clash with All For One. Now in close range, he would put himself at risk to deal damage to his unstoppable force of a man. Endeavor's flames would leak through All For One's pressurized flame curtain, a defense against attacks of this sort that was now failing to fully protect the villain. This issue was enough, but at the same time, Hawks was ready to cut down any counterattack. And so, as is typical of All For One, when at a disadvantage, he resorts to mind games. As Endeavor showered flames onto All For One, the real fun would begin, because things are always so interesting whenever this man speaks. All For One would plant seeds of doubt in Endeavor and Hawks by questioning the coordination of his opponents, putting the blame on Endeavor. But no! Endeavor would shut this up and tell Hawks not to let up. The damage was piling on. All For One super regeneration could not keep up. As the damage stacked, All For One continued the psychological attacks. He would bring attention to the battlefield below them. Everyone was giving it their best, except the so-called #1 hero, Endeavor. At least according to All For One, that is. He claimed that Endeavor's mind was adrift, and this is funny because while Endeavor may actually be a bit out of it, having it called out like this makes it so much worse. And no surprise, it did of course get worse. All For One would mess with Endeavor more by mentioning the battle between the hero's sons, Toya and Shoto. He'd ask why Endeavor wasn't happier that his perfect child stopped the failed experiment. A statement which clearly infuriated Endeavor enough for him to reply in frustration. Hawks would yell out for his senior to stop this, reminding Endeavor of what happened to All Might in Kamino, specifically referring to when All For One revealed that Shigaraki was Shimura Nana's grandson, leaving the symbol of peace broken. That reveal had caused All Might to momentarily fall apart, and it would be terrible if that were to happen now to Endeavor in the midst of this ever pivotal battle. All For One would then make it clear to Endeavor that he has always kept an eye on the hero's lust for power. It was then that Endeavor would have the shocking reality of what happened to Toya hinted at. The real reason for Toya's body having never been found was the intervention of All For One. Hearing this, Endeavor froze. All For One still had this card up his sleeve. And man, at this point, All For One just has ammo ready for everyone he comes across. Bombshells on bombshells just ready for each and every situation. The information All For One is teasing here is what we learned about Toya's life-changing accident and recovery. All For One was the one who took his burnt body from the blazing mountains and brought him into a facility where he would be taken care of. Endeavor here does not have the full story, but it has now been hinted at, and the rage from knowing this alone would soon show. Hawk, seeing the situation turn for the worse, knew he had to be there for the #1 hero. Endeavor is someone who lives for atonement, and as such he is unable to harden his heart like Hawks. And it is for this very reason that Hawks knew Endeavor definitely could not face DABI, and he knew he had to be there for his childhood idol. Flying towards the conflict, Hawks would call out to remind Endeavor that right now his only duty was to defeat All For One. At the same time though, Endeavor would roar like a raging inferno incarnate, screaming the name of the man who would capitalize on his family's dismay. This would immediately backfire. All For One would stab into Endeavor during his lapse in judgment and add salt to the wound, saying, "Got you." Not only was Endeavor just hit hard, but Hawks was about to be as well. All For One would prepare a blast and ask Hawks if he thought it was possible to avoid the attack at such close range. He would even call Hawks later Nagant's replacement, referring to Nagant's previous part in the Hero Association and his current role. This little jab didn't have much effect, as I suppose Hawks' secrets aren't as deep. But back to the situation at hand, Hawks knew he was in trouble. There was no way to dodge All For One's attack so suddenly. This would be the end of him. He knew this, and so he was ready to take action by at least helping Endeavor to get close enough to activate Prominence Burn before perishing. But before that final gambit of a plan could take effect, the young stars of this conflict, Tokoyami and Jiro, would arrive. They would make use of a combination super move that saw Jiro send a shockwave while on Tokoyami's back as he flew way up high, saving Hawks from All For One, much to the surprise of both. That being said, these two heroes in training, despite having pulled this off, were a tad bit poorly coordinated. Jiro was a bit frazzled as she wasn't used to flying and was having a hard time holding on. Meanwhile, Tokoyami was having difficulty focusing on account of her bodily movements. Hawks would yell out to his young protege, firstly calling him by his name before correcting himself to his hero name, and being unfamiliar with Jiro would simply call her that girl from Class A. He would then express that they should stay away as this is no place for them, that they will die fighting All For One. Tokoyami would then fiercely rebut that he may not be Endeavor, but Hawks should know that he can fight alongside him, which prompted an expression from Hawks that I think is just magnificent. All For One would then make note of the insignificant insects moving around, then feeling a bit nostalgic as he'd say it reminded him of the comics he used to read in the past, that in those stories, the side characters like them were usually used for the sake of displaying just how strong the Demon Lord truly is. A sort of meta bit of commentary that I find very fascinating, as it plays with the expectations and preconceived notions in a way that makes me then question the validity of these claims in this particular circumstance, as we would then receive one of the best shots of Jiro in the series as she clapped back at All For One, stating that such things are better said after victory. Horikoshi's art style is on full display lately and I cannot get enough of it, but man, it takes some incredible confidence to be able to talk back to All For One, and especially in such a calm and collected manner. Although with Jiro and Tokoyami being so minor, it is doubtful that All For One would have much verbal ammo on them specifically. That being said, although All For One's words haven't had much effect on Hawks thus far, given how much the hero cares about Tokoyami, that will likely be a point of exploitation for All For One, but we'll just have to wait and see. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.